In this paper, we present techniques for modeling and rendering feathers in birds. Here you see a bird modeled and rendered using our system. First, let's see how to model and render individual feathers. Our work is motivated by the observation that a feather is a branching structure that can be described by an L system. We derived an L system that allows the user to easily create feathers of different shapes and types by adjusting a few parameters. The randomness in feather geometry is also modeled in our L system. For realistic rendering, we combine the L system with a bidirectional texture function, or BTF. The BTF models the geometry details on the feather blade. The BTF is calculated offline and used for efficient rendering with graphics hardware. The synthesis of a feather is based on feather anatomy. The shape of a feather is defined by its rachis and the barbs distributed along both sides of the rachis. Here we show an interactive editing session for creating a feather. You can see that it's very easy for a user to control the shape and characteristics of a feather. Here we show the effect of randomness. The feather on the left has no random gaps on the blade. The feather on the right has random gaps on the blade and looks more realistic. Here are several feathers generated using different parameters. For realistic rendering of feather appearance, we built a geometric model for the barbule structure on the feather blade. From this geometry model, we compute a BTF. The L system provides all the barb curves on the feather. Each barb curve is rendered as a quadrilateral strip. The pre-computed BTF is used to capture the fine geometry details of the barbule structure. The feather on the left is rendered without a BTF and it looks flat. The feather on the right is rendered with a BTF and it shows the barb structure. Now we describe how to create feathers to cover a bird's body. From a geometry model of the bird, we find the feather growing positions using a biased retiling technique. The initial feather orientations are interpolated from the user-specified key feathers. The wing and tails are constructed using simple skeletons shown in red. The final feather orientations are computed from the initial feather orientations using a novel technique called recursive collision detection. The image on the left shows feathers rendered according to the initial feather orientations. The feathers interpenetrate each other. Many feathers also penetrate into the bird's body, shown as a yellow surface. The image on the right shows feathers rendered according to the final feather orientation, and there is no interpenetration. Now let's show some results. The feather on the left is a real feather. The feather on the right is a synthetic feather modeled and rendered using our system. The synthetic feather looks fairly realistic. Here we show an eagle modeled and rendered using our system. All feathers in this American Indian headdress are also modeled and rendered using our system.
Here is the view from the head-mounted display of a subject in the virtual environment. Overlaid in the upper left-hand corner are electrocardiograph, shown in red, and skin conductance, shown in green. As subjects perceive the danger in the next room, heart rate and skin conductance increase. It takes approximately 2 seconds from the time of stimulus to the onset of physiological reaction. While it is difficult to distinguish the increase in heart rate visually, post-processing analysis shows that heart rate is significantly higher in the room with the 20-foot pit. In addition to the physiological responses, many subjects have strong behavioral reactions to the virtual environment, especially when combined with the 1.5-inch wooden ledge. Here we see a subject's reaction on her second time in the virtual environment. After multiple exposures to the virtual environment, subjects often habituate and become more comfortable. Here we see the same subject on her fourth time in the environment. Notice that she does not have a strong reaction to the virtual ledge.
Is a process of separating foreground objects from imagery and is commonly used in special effects for films. In this example, we remove the actor from the scene. An alpha matte is computed, the foreground is separated, and the foreground is composited onto a new background. The most common approach is blue screen matting, where the actor is filmed in front of a blue screen. Though effective, it is expensive and requires studio setup. Manual approaches to matting include rotoscoping, where the artist directly draws the mattes. Though highly time-consuming, it can be effective for hard edges. More complicated regions, such as hair, are much more difficult. Recently, new methods have been proposed for still image matting, which require no blue screen and can handle complicated regions. These require an input hint image, also called a trimap, which partitions the image into foreground, background, and unknown areas that may contain fractional alphas. An alpha estimate is then computed for the unknown area, the one shown here by a Bayesian approach. Finally, a composite image can be calculated. In this paper, we introduce video matting, which extends still image matting techniques to moving images, such as this sequence. Our system is composed of three main components. Trimap interpolation computes a trimap for every frame in the sequence. Bayesian matting computes an alpha estimate. Finally, when possible, we reconstruct a background to improve our results. We first show the process of trimap interpolation. The first step is to draw trimaps for keyframes. In this case, 11 keyframes are used for a 90-frame sequence. Using optical flow and techniques described in the paper, we interpolate the rest of the trimaps. These trimaps are used to compute an initial alpha estimate. We show a composite over a uniform background. The results are good, but there are some artifacts. We identify problem areas in the mattes and clean them by hand. Additional keyframe trimaps are automatically created for any hand-edited frames. In this case, we add a total of 2 frames, each in different parts of the sequence. The edit will be propagated to neighboring frames automatically during the repeat trimap interpolation. A final set of mattes is computed. Notice the fractional alpha in the hair region. The foreground is shown here composited over a novel background. Here is another sequence with large areas of hair that would be difficult for manual matte painting. Here is the resulting composites using our technique. It needs improvement. We improve results by reconstructing the background. First, a rough rectangular garbage mat is used to remove the foreground. We then reconstruct the background by filling in pixels from neighboring frames. Here is the result. We use this background for both trimap refinement and better alpha estimation. The choice of the Bayesian still image matting algorithm is important. Notice the temporal artifacts in the result using the Rosone-Tomasi algorithm. Here is the composite sequence. Notice the improved fractional alphas. For other test sequences, we show a possible usage of video matting for film production to edit the background. It would not be possible with blue screen techniques. In this sequence, we added signs to the background. This is a faster moving sequence. We add a flower pot to the table. We also give the dinosaur a companion. Using Bayesian still image matting, we've extracted the dinosaur from the background and added a reflected copy to the scene. These scenes demonstrate success for fast-moving, hard edges. Finally, video matting also performs well on another difficult type of effect, smoke. In this original sequence, we've decided to add a few instructive signs. Notice the fractional alphas of the smoke plumes. Our results demonstrate that a combination of semi-automatic techniques can be used to extract accurate mattes from complex video sequences.
In this video, we present our lighting reproduction approach to live-action compositing. The idea is to composite an actor into a virtual environment such that they are illuminated by the light within that environment. To reproduce the illumination, we use Light Stage 3, which consists of 156 computer-controlled LED light sources, each of which can produce any RGB color and intensity of light. The light stage also includes 2 video cameras, a color camera for recording the illuminated actor, and an infrared monochrome camera for recording the actor's matte or alpha channel. In this first example, we illuminate our actor with light captured as a light probe image in the UC Berkeley Eucalyptus Grove. The Light Stage 3 control program converts the light probe image into its closest approximation with 156 light sources. Then, an actor standing within Light Stage 3 is illuminated with a reproduction of the illumination. In this example, our actor stands on a rotating platform and the computer rotates the illumination along with the actor. To obtain a matte, the actor is recorded simultaneously by the infrared camera, silhouetted against a field of infrared light. By dividing the pixel values of this image sequence by a clean plate taken without the actor, we obtain a clean matte with the background in white and the actor in black. Using the matte, we can composite the illuminated actor in front of the virtual background. If everything worked, the actor should appear to be illuminated by the environment into which they are composited. In the second example, we composite our actor into a light probe image of Grace Cathedral in San Francisco. For the Grace Cathedral environment, Light Stage 3 reproduces the bluish light from the stained glass windows above, as well as the bright yellow indirect light reflecting from the cathedral's illuminated wooden altar. When our actor is composited into the environment, we can see our actor's face and hair illuminated by both the stained glass windows and the illuminated altar. In this third example, we composite our actor into the overcast environment of the Uffizi Gallery in Florence. The Uffizi light probe provides a higher resolution background, as well as a very diffuse lighting environment. The somewhat limited resolution of our prototype's light sources can be seen in the shadows on our actor's neck. For our final example, we composite our actor into a virtual three-dimensional set with spatially varying illumination. We used a global illumination renderer to render a background plate traveling down the colonnade of the Parthenon. We also rendered a virtual light probe sequence traveling forward at the desired position of our actor. As our actor walks in place in the light stage, we play the light probe sequence back as a movie of incident illumination, which alternately places our actor in sunlight and shadow as she walks by the columns of the colonnade. Compositing her into the background plate, we see both the direct and indirect illumination change on our actor as she walks forward. As she walks by the colored banners on the wall to her left, we can see the subtle red and blue indirect illumination on the left side of her face. For all of our examples, the photometric and geometric calibration procedures used to produce these results are described in the accompanying paper in the Siggraph 2002 proceedings.
In this paper, we present a novel caching scheme for computing global illumination at interactive rates in dynamic scenes. A sparse set of image plane samples is rendered using an expensive shading process such as path tracing. These samples are cached in an object space hierarchical mesh data structure called the shading cache. Image display is performed asynchronously from the shading cache update, so we can maintain a high frame rate at all times. Each patch is assigned a priority, which is used to guide the sampling process into visually important regions. A visualization of the priority map is shown in the lower left corner with brighter regions representing greater estimated error. The selected samples are shown as colored dots. Samples are picked by 3 processes: hit and test shown in red, random selection shown in green, and flood filling shown in yellow. This scheme usually captures important features in the image with very few samples, as seen from the mesh subdivision. Our technique can handle dynamic lighting conditions very efficiently. Notice the soft shadows and indirect lighting on the ceiling change as we move the light source. This is a scene illuminated mostly by diffuse indirect light. In this clip, we will see how the indirect illumination is rapidly updated as we move around the furniture and also the ceiling, which is an important secondary light source. Here we see indirect glossy reflections being computed interactively. In this experiment, we compute acoustic by area sampling the glossy ring. This experiment indicates that our system can be used with pixel-based renderers other than traditional path tracing.
We begin with a demo of a diffuse head model lit by an analytic circular light source. A 25-component transfer vector at each mesh vertex captures self-shadowing. Correct soft shadows are generated as the model moves and the lighting changes. This effect is impossible to achieve in real time with other methods such as multipass rendering or Monte Carlo ray tracing. We next compare accuracy of various orders of spherical harmonics. We begin with a small light source, where more bands are necessary for accuracy. With a medium-sized light source, differences are visible but less apparent between the higher-order harmonics. With a very large source, the higher-order harmonics look almost identical. We next compare shadowing methods. Difference between shadowed and unshadowed transfer is clear. Our method allows multiple lights to be added to the scene. Real-time performance is achieved no matter how many or how big they are. Here the head model is lit by synthetic geometry. At every frame, we capture incident radiance on the head by rendering a cube map on the graphics hardware. The cube map is then converted to spherical harmonics with a fast computation. Incident radiance can be sampled at more than a single point. This correctly accounts for local lighting, including its shadows. Here, 8 sample points were generated over the mesh using iterated closest point as a pre-process. Transfer vectors can represent diffuse interreflections as well as shadows. Here, a bird model exhibits both shadows and interreflections that respond to lighting change. Interreflections are also simulated in a pre-process and don't change runtime performance at all.
For glossy objects, we pre-compute a transfer matrix per vertex rather than a vector. The resulting model exhibits self-shadowing and interreflections that change dynamically. The lighting review can be changed separately in real time. We now show the Happy Buddha model in acquired environments. As before, we can rotate the model or the environment. The same model is rendered as diffuse using transfer vectors or glossy using transfer matrices. We can incorporate shiny objects into the preprocessed model to obtain caustics. The caustics change properly as we rotate the model or the environment. Self-transfer can be extended to volumetric data as well as surfaces. Soft shadows within this cloud respond to lighting changes in real time. We generalize self-transfer to neighborhood transfer so that objects can cast shadows and reflections onto dynamic receivers. The torus's transfer is represented as a 3D volume of transfer matrices surrounding it. Here a torus casts a soft shadow on a receiver plane which can be moved. This example is similar, but shows a dynamic caster moving over a fixed terrain receiver. Shadows accurately follow the moving glider and respond to its changing height.